But self-awareness is a bitch if you don't have self-compassion. Because you're just gonna like dig out all these things that you just feel bad about yourself. So if you don't link with the self-compassion, it's it's not a good place to be.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to MYYT, where you are learning to level up your yoga teaching one masterful class at a time. Can I just say that I am having so much fun doing this podcasting thing? I mean, I knew that it would be fun, but I didn't think it would be this fun to have these kinds of conversations with these amazing teachers. So I hope that you are getting as much out of this as I am. Baby Finn is going to get his 4-month vaccines today, and I am low-key having an anxiety attack about it. I don't know how you mothers out there did with this decision. I feel like it's kind of one of those decisions as a mother that comes with the need to do your research and make a decision whether you're doing vaccines or not. So for those of you that are listening that have words of wisdom about it or other supportive material that you found helpful when you were making the same decision, I would really appreciate it if you send it my way to my Instagram, Master Your Yoga Teaching. We are moving forward with doing vaccines mainly because I host international yoga retreats and we do a bunch of travel. So my husband and I are deciding to move forward with it. But at the same time, whenever I go to these appointments, I'm like, am I making the right decision for my baby? I hope that I'm not injecting anything terrible into him. And so I just feel a little anxious. We're leaving for that here in a couple of minutes. And I know that he's probably not going to feel well because of it for the rest of the day. But I'm hoping that it is a good thing. So if you're a mom and you've gone through this before, reach out, help a sister out. I would really appreciate it. For today's true story submission, we actually have a story from Megan Bateman. She's one of the lucky winners of the review raffle. Shout out to all the people who've already left a 5-star rating and even sent a review. I so appreciate you guys. Thank you for supporting the podcast. It means the world to me. And Megan shared this story. I thought I would read it to you here. She said, I went through YTT 7 years ago and taught for about a year and a half after that. I stopped teaching after meeting my husband and starting RN school. Fast forward to today, and I am now teaching again, but it's been a tough mental journey, which has led me into the philosophical side of yoga. It's been incredibly helpful, and now I'm starting to teach entirely differently than 7 years ago. I was more focused on the asana portion then. I am bringing in the more holistic approach to my classes and offering private sessions to give an in-depth experience to my clients. I'm so thankful I came back. It's been so rewarding. Thank you, Megan, for submitting your true story. And for you listening, if you would like to have your story featured on the podcast, all you have to do is head to my Instagram and comment the words true story on any post or send me a direct message, and you'll be prompted to submit via the form. It's also in the show notes if you'd rather check it out there. In today's episode, I chat with Cora Lee. If you yourself have ever struggled with the I'm not enough narrative, then turn this episode up. This one is for you. Cora Lee shares her super inspiring story about epic career shifts, even if your family doesn't necessarily support you. She talks about shattering this intense pressure that we all have to be perfect. And for me personally, the biggest takeaway was the power of self-compassion. In this episode, we also talk about things like the importance of owning your backstory, the best benefit that yoga offers besides flexibility, and it's not what you think, why self-awareness is only half the battle, and the key ingredient that you need to find balance, the surprising truth about what students really want from their yoga teacher, why advanced yoga skills don't necessarily translate to great teaching, what's missing in the yoga industry and how you can fill the gap, a powerful African proverb that will transform your perspective on community. I'm so excited for you to listen to this episode. Let's dive in. Hey yogis, Mackenzie Fly here, mom, yogapreneur, teacher trainer, retreat leader, and your guide to master your yoga teaching. This podcast is your weekly dose of actionable wisdom and candid chats with industry experts. Learn to connect deeper, weave yogic magic, and lead by example. Full disclosure, I'm still mastering it too, but together we'll skyrocket your impact and income. Hit subscribe and let's grow, one episode at a time. All right, everybody. Hello and welcome back. I am so excited you are here for today's guest. I have for you Cora Lee. Her resume, you guys, and her bio right here is just so impressive. She was born in Hong Kong, educated overseas, and a former banker. Cora discovered yoga in 2011 after the birth of her second child, initially through therapeutic and restorative exercises. After training as a yoga teacher under Patrick Creelman and Renat Perlman in 2014, she joined a 200-hour training, felt her dharma to teach as a natural extension of her passion for yoga, completed her 500-hour RYT in 2017, and started teaching in Hong Kong and then Singapore. She's received training and mentorship from various teachers, including Jason Crandall and Judith Lassiter. Cora nurtures an empowering bond with her students through yoga, fostering self-awareness, relationships, and resilience for life's challenges. It's so beautiful. She views yoga as a lifelong journey of growth, sharing and evolving with her students. She is also a certified nutritionist through Precision Nutrition and Stanford Continuing Studies and Nutritional Planning at Harvard Medical School. She completed the executive program at Stanford Graduate School of Business and has embarked her yogipreneur journey as a yoga coach for leaders and mentor for yoga teachers. Everybody, when I found Cora on Instagram, I knew I just had to have her on the podcast. That last little sentence of her bio just is proof that she's in the right place, as everybody who is listening is a yoga teacher, and we all love to learn from each other here. And we are so excited to learn from you today, Cora. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you. I just felt like I just read my own bio, and we all have self doubt, and when I listened to my own bio, I was like, not too bad.
Yes, absolutely.
Come a long way. Come a long way. So.
Yeah, everybody, we were speaking before we actually clicked the recording button that our relationship is unique in the sense that we found each other on Instagram. And me, Mackenzie, I'm in Las Vegas, and Cora, you're in Singapore, right?
Yes, I'm in Singapore, the other side of the world.
Mhm.
And it's I think one of the great thing about online is you really get to meet anyone all around the world. You're reading my bio, and the later in the last 2 3 years since COVID, most of my continuous learning is actually online, and I feel like I get to not only study with teachers that normally I can't get to, and at the same time I get to meet everyone around the world and making bigger impact, and that's exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so cool that with something like Instagram, these relationships truly can be formed and can be nurtured. So I think I say in a couple of my messages when I reach out to people, hey, I know receiving an Instagram message from a stranger is usually like the first red flag, like stranger danger. But before you sound the alarm, I just noticed that you're a yoga teacher. I feel like we're on similar paths in terms of the call on our heart to serve and help other yoga teachers. So I'm really glad that you were open to receiving the message, and then even more so
Yeah.
to come on the show.
I think I think we can already start out like lesson number one for yoga teachers is actually to reach out, right? It's I think there's so often times that we just like not go out and ask. We don't ask for help. We don't go out and reach out to people. These days, I was just sent out to messages to people that I don't know or even senior teachers, and you'll be quite surprised that they answer. They actually answer in person, and so. Uh, just get out there and reach out to people, and if you find somebody that resonate with you, I think collaboration is a great way too, right? And that's what we're doing today.
That's a great piece of advice. And it's that simple. What is that phrase that's like, if you don't ask, the answer is already no. And the worst that could happen is they say
Yeah.
no, so that's really it.
Very good advice is like What is it to lose? If you just ask. If it is a no, it's a no, but it
Hmm.
may happen.
Hmm.
You never know.
I feel like you have such an interesting background. I kind of want to first start with your transition. How did you go from being a banker to a yoga teacher? And how does that career path infuse from being a banker into now being a yoga teacher?
It wasn't exactly like I quit my banking job and just decided, you know what, I'm going to be a yoga teacher. It wasn't like that. In fact, there was a 3 year gap in between. You probably can guess what I did in that 3 years. Was a new mom. When I think back, I do think life has a plan for us. Things happen at the right time in the right place. I was pregnant with my first son when the global financial crisis happened in 2018. So, no, I was not laid off, but many of my friends at the time lost their jobs, and everyone was really in a mode of fear and panic. And I was a new, happy mom with my little baby. And I just told my husband, I said, I don't want to go back to work right now, right? So I extended my maternity leave. It was supposed to be a 6 months sabbatical or just extended maternity leave, and I never went back. Then I ended up having my second child as well, so that was 3 years. And having two young kids, I have developed a lot of pains and aches in my body. In those 3 years, I was probably disconnected with the outside world. Like I was just in there with my two little young kids, and I was disconnected. I started going back to yoga class originally to fix my pain in the body. But I remember now when I got on the yoga mat on my first class, I found my me space, right? The feeling was just so instant. It's like, oh my God, this is so great. And I was hooked. And I ended up going every day. And obviously, I improved my physical health and release my pain. But I think what I really got out of it is to find a space for myself. That's true, and then eventually also to meet a lot of people, so I get connected with the world, the outside world again, being with other people. So it's really a magical experience that I got. But yes, it was almost a love at first sight again when I got on the mat, and eventually I became a yoga teacher. So maybe a little bit on how I got into a yoga teacher journey is, so I went to yoga almost every day and goes through ups and downs. Not going to talk too much about my crazy yoga journey, but I met my key teacher Patrick, who is still my key teacher and a dear friend at this point, and he convinced me to take the yoga teacher training. And like many teachers, I said, nah, not planning to teach and not interested. And he goes, his words were, "You a full time mom. What do you have to lose?"
Mm.
So I did it. I went into the yoga teacher training without any anticipation to teach. Like many of us, the training was super dense. I wasn't interested in yoga philosophy. I was really got lost in the anatomy. But I remember the time when I was asked to stand up to teach in front of the class. I was nervous, for sure, but was as soon as I stand up, the first line came out. There was a oh my God moment.
Mm.
It was like, oh my God, that is what I meant to do. This is what I'm going to do the rest of my life. Growing up in an Asian family, my parents wanted me to be successful. So, but they see successful as making money, being professional. So you're either professional being a doctor, a lawyer, or you're in business. They put me into studying business in college. And so the choice wasn't really mine. We have a lot of teachers in my family. I grew up in a very big Chinese family, and my aunt is a teacher. She still is. And my cousin right now is a teacher. So we have a few teachers in my own family. But I think growing up, I would start being fed with that being a teacher is an unambitious job. But
Mm.
that moment when I step out and teach in front of the class, a big memory came back. Since I was a kid, I always wanted to be a teacher. So if, when we were young, you have to write an essay and say, what do you want to do when you grow up? It was always a teacher. Always. Always. So now I'm hooked into yoga. That's my passion. And then it brought back to a whole memory of always want to be a teacher. And that moment, I'm like, okay, you know what? That's what I'm gonna do. And since then, there we go. Like this is now 10 plus years later, and I'm sure this is my path, and I'm just going to do this forever.
And I love how you described finding teaching, especially teaching yoga, as almost this homecoming relationship. That's really cool, or realization.
What was that phrase? Like life is coming for us, not at us, right? I think what yoga teaches us, and I think is a great reminder for the newer yoga teachers out there as well, is we I think yoga teaches us to have faith and trust that things happen for a reason, and we just need a little bit of faith and trust in it, and life is coming for us, and whatever that we had in our experience shape who we are today, right? And so one of the exercise that I do in my mentorship with newer yoga teachers, the first thing is actually write their backstory, right? Go back to look into how they started yoga, how they started, or if you're a seasoned teacher, how they started teaching, and just go back to these roots and discover these little gems, and you would ended up realize that, wow, um, how those type of experience would help you to think who you want to be as a yoga teacher today, or as even
Mm-hmm.
yoga practitioners. And a lot of times I also find that what people went in, if they go into yoga for a particular reason, for me it was like pain, right? And when I think back, it first of all, right now, the thing that I get out of it is different. And second, when I go back, I realize like, okay, you know what? Maybe the reason is actually something else, right? As I said, I thought it was the physical pain, but turns out, I think what it was I felt disconnected with the world, and what I found in yoga was actually friends, and that's
Mm,
what it shapes me to what I want to do today, which is building community, right? So it's all related. If you actually go back and look back and take that experience to to come back to who you are today, and then using that to see what you want to do in the future, I think that's very helpful.
absolutely. And that was such a lovely way of putting it. It makes me think of the Steve Jobs quote, "It's only in the looking back that the dots connect." You start to see upon reflection that it all does actually make sense, and it did all have a point. It did all serve a purpose. I hope everybody that's listening takes time to kind of do this exercise that Cora is talking about. What are all the things, even if they seem unrelated to yoga, other job careers, other periods or pockets in your life, like motherhood, that you learned something during that time, you gained a new skill? How can that inform your yoga teaching now?
Many yoga teachers, especially when you're new, you get so overwhelmed and have this feeling of, I don't have, I'm
Mhm.
lacking, right? So I don't have, and then I don't have enough knowledge, I don't have enough skills. But people don't buy what you say or what you teach. The techniques and skills are one thing. People come back for who you are. And who you are is all this experience that you have, right? And I feel spending some time into this sort of inner work just makes you be more authentic, and being able to cut out the noise out there, and also in your head, that I'm not enough, I don't have enough skills, I don't have enough techniques, and being able to show up as who you are, and also to feel, you know what, I have something to
Mhm.
give, right? I have something that I can share. It's not just about like how your where your leg is in
Mhm.
Warrior 2, right? It's about teaching people how to live through struggles, how to remain more calm when chaos happen, and motherhood
Mhm.
teaches that, right?
Man,
Right.
yeah.
So I think, yeah, exactly. I think both you and I have this understanding on how we can show up as we are, and knowing that we have enough through our other experience, not just on the mat, to share with others. And that's more important than teaching
It's a
how to do
really
Warrior 2.
interesting concept. I think it's just making me become aware of the tendency that yoga teachers have to almost be like the hype people for everybody else. Will like give so much love, so much recognition, so much praise, so much encouragement to other people, to our students. And then we, at the same time, we have this tendency to be not intentionally, but almost like violent with ourselves, or so self critical in the way that we consider ourselves or where we're at in the journey. And we teach and preach, hopefully, all day on it's okay, let it be a practice, to other people. And then when we turn the lens back on ourselves, we have this habit of just thinking that we're not enough or really struggle with unworthiness. So I love that you kind of address that. And to any yoga teacher listening, honey child, it's okay.
So in psychology, there's negativity bias, meaning that negativity bias is a self-defense mechanism. It's a natural mechanism in our with our brain and body that we are trying to safeguard ourselves from the tiger, right, out there. But we now live in a relatively safe world, right? There's no tiger out there, but we are always in this response of thinking negative still, because we first have to know that is natural, but the negativity bias is now kind of against us in a world that is relatively more safe. So it's important for us to practice being more positive with ourselves. And you're right, we always think that we're not good enough, and even we're preaching to our students that self-love, compassion, we talk about all that, and yet we have self-criticism, and we all do. So we're humans too as
Mhm.
teachers, but it's important for us. I think the lesson is we're also struggling, we're also learning, we keep having to fight this negativity bias that we naturally have. You brought up a point that reminds me of a conversation that I recently have with a teacher. Is a new teacher. So when I hear what her struggle is to start teaching, and she said, I feel I don't have enough a strong enough
Mm.
practice. So not teaching. She said, I don't have enough strong enough practice, meaning that she felt her own practice is not maybe advanced enough and things like that, right? So regardless whether, like, I'm not going to talk about whether a teachers need to be advanced in the practice. The answer is actually no. But what I said to her is, you know what? If you think you're not good enough, you probably will see the same thing in your students.
Wow.
That is, I know it may be hard to hear, but that actually, when I think that, it changed my way of teaching, meaning that we gotta have to, as teachers, have to be start to think we are good enough. If you see yourself, like you look at yourself and you're like, oh my God, my handstand looks horrible, my Urdhva Dhanurasana doesn't look like the thing, you're gonna see the same thing in your students, unfortunately. It's a brutal truth. And then you're going to see the flaws in them when you only see the flaws in yourself. So as teachers, being able to love ourselves first, practice self-compassion, practice really feeling we are good enough, not we are good enough, we are good enough to share what we have
Yeah.
today, what matter that is. I think that is powerful, and only through that you can be the compassionate teacher to your students. If we are self-criticizing, you're going to do the same to your students,
It's the truth.
unfortunately.
And sometimes I think
Right.
that's why ahimsa and satya balance each other out, that sometimes the truth is the truth, and the phrase is truth hurts. But when it's delivered with like
Yeah.
non-harming and kindness as well, it kind of blunts that blade. So I think you delivered it from a kind and non-harming place, but maybe it does initially, but that's all the more proof sometimes that it's true.
Self-awareness is a bitch. My husband would say, like, you guys talk about self-awareness a lot, but you're really not that self-aware. Like, anyways, what I'm trying to say is self-awareness is what is us is the first. But self-awareness is a bitch if you don't have
Mm.
self-compassion. Because you're just gonna like dig out all these things that you just feel bad about yourself. So if you don't link with the self-compassion, it's it's not a good place to
Yes.
be. So yeah, self-compassion. So while we're discovering the truth, which is self-awareness, it's important for us to be compassionate to us
I
and to
love
others.
that. I love that so much. It's almost like karma's a bitch, and I feel like we could also put that on a shirt. You said something
Hmm.
that stuck out to me. I feel, where is that misconception that the best quote unquote students, or the students with the most advanced practices, are going to be the better teachers, when that's not always the case. And the more quote unquote advanced, let's just use these semantics, these words, they're semantics, but let's use these words that are arbitrary of quote unquote advanced. I felt like it was actually more of a disservice to me as a teacher. The better I got at the asanas, then I felt like the further away I got from being able to relate to people, especially just like everyday people who don't necessarily bend down and try to touch their toes. Like, things that felt so it made me not be able to describe or speak the language of the body as well when I was having this very like advanced practice. So I find that to be the case, that sometimes these practitioners who have really advanced practices, then they have no clue how to communicate it to people, because they don't have the objections, or they don't have the obstacles or the roadblocks in the body that most people do. And so therefore, number one, they can't relate, and then number two, they can't articulate that to
Mm.
people.
Oh, I totally. And interesting. So I think your background is like
Mhm.
dance or something. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. So
I get it right. Okay. So I that's not my background. My background was a banker. However, when I started yoga, I realized I was being seen as
mhm,
talented. What does it mean? Meaning that turns out I'm pretty flexible, or as thought that's what I thought. And until quite recently, I'm diagnosed with hypermobility. So I think what you just said just have a little bit of light bulb in my head to just talk about, yes, to talk about what we often thought was advanced. It's something else. That's the
mhm,
first point. Is actually something else. It's not exactly. Some people are just born more naturally flexible, or in that case, hypermobile. And we being seen as the advanced practitioners is not exactly right. And to be honest, me being seen as the person who can bend, who can do all these shapes, I thought I was in the right path, and eventually actually lead to more injuries. So the fact that what people think advanced yoga is just how it looks like in the shape is not very helpful. Like okay, I have flexible hips, so I probably won't be able to troubleshoot what people feel like when they're
mhm,
stiff,
mhm,
right? So I was actually listening to Jason's podcast. He was talking about injury management, and one of the main injury management is on the wrist, right? So pressure on the wrist, and he basically say, I have a lot of injuries and struggles in my yoga life, but I never have problem with my wrist. So I have problems troubleshooting with
right.
wrists because I never felt that. For me right now, there are times that if it comes to places that I am quote unquote more naturally okay with, I seek advice from other people, right? So one of is to learn from others as well, and to really being able to see the struggles. One thing that has really helped me with in the last few years is to study anatomy. When I start to study anatomy, I stop to think about shapes. I think about bones and structures and how things move, how body works. And when I am able to have a little bit knowledge of that, I feel I'm more equipped with information and knowledge to how to help people beyond their how they look like underneath the skin, and being able to truly teach people how to adapt poses to their
Mhm,
body instead of fitting themselves into poses. So in my class I usually say, don't fit your body into poses. Let the pose work for your body. I think learning a little bit about how body works, and that includes a little bit of anatomical or biomechanics knowledge, can be very helpful for teachers to one to being able to really help students, but at the same time teach in a way that is beyond how it
mhm.
looks like. Did I answer your
Yes,
question?
so
I
beautifully.
hope
You dropped so many little
so.
gems in there. It reminds me of a phrase that my teacher often says as well. It's not about forcing your body into the shape, it's about using the shapes to get into your body, something to that effect. And it's so
Yeah.
true that the bone level, we all have so much skeletal variation. And when you stop like looking at people as these like cookie cutter poses.
We all know we have met people who are advanced practitioners, it doesn't make them a good teacher. Like we're talking to teachers right now, right? Satya, like truth, brutal truth. There are advanced practitioners out there that they can do all these crazy stuff. It does not make them a good teacher. It doesn't mean they can teach. And I've met many teachers who have a very foundational practice, and they are
Yeah.
amazing teachers. So I think we have to get over the notion of, one, you need to have advanced practice. What is advanced practice anyways, right? Shapes? No. But we have to be able to do a handstand, we have to be able to do these things to be a good teacher, and that is absolutely
Mhm.
not true, right? I think that is something that we have to get over with. And the second thing is to know that you are good enough for somebody. So let's say if I'm a beginner, I don't think I want to learn from someone. Let's say is it on a scale to 1 to 10. Let's call 10 as advanced. I really don't like this term, by the way. But if I'm a 1, I may not want to learn from somebody from a 10, right? Like if I'm starting yoga, I'm not gonna go to someone who is doing like one hand
Mhm.
handstand. I want to be with somebody who is 2, 3 steps
Mhm.
ahead of me, not so enough to teach me something. If I go to 10, I feel intimidated. So I think we don't always want the best of the best of the best. We want someone who actually can teach us something, also understand our
Mhm.
struggles. The person at the 10 will not understand our struggle as a beginner. They forgot, probably, right? And so I think that's quite helpful for yoga teachers out there who think that you're not good enough to teach yet. And I always say you're always good enough to teach somebody. You started yoga, you learned something throughout your experience, and so you have something that you can teach somebody. Those somebody will need you today, so don't wait until when. Like you will never feel
Mhm.
good enough. Oh, that's another one. You will
Yeah.
never be good enough. Never. It never happened. Right. I feel like I need to be good enough to teach, right? This is one thing that we hear a lot from new yoga teachers. Like I ask them, why didn't you start? It's, oh no, I'm not good enough yet. And I'm like, you will never be. This is just like is an ending thing, right? Just you will never feel you're good enough. And not feeling good enough is actually a great thing because you want to improve. One of the biggest problem of people not moving forward at times is when they feel
Mhm.
good enough. So that also to tell yoga teachers, if you're panic, if you have anxiety when you teach, that's great. If you don't feel good enough, it means you care, right? If you're like, I got this, then that's when you
Yeah.
stop caring.
It
I
is
hope it's
really
helpful.
helpful. And I think that the struggle, if you're out there, if you're listening to this right now and you feel like you're struggling, that it's through this experience of struggle that brings forth the feelings of understanding, like Cora is speaking to, the compassion, the empathy, the um, understanding that then gives you the platform to be able to, like Cora again is speaking to, meet people where they're at, but then also be not just meeting people where they're at, but it's like plus some, plus the very next right steps for them. And so the struggle is the necessary ingredient. The struggle that you're going through is exactly the thing that needs to happen to help you be there to be able to help other people.
Yoga teaches us is to how to navigate through difficulties, right? And we as teachers go through the same, and being able to get through that ourselves, and also don't worry to be vulnerable and be honest with people. I think people don't need the perfect yoga teacher that has everything. I think being with people and seeing their struggles, and even let them know, not to try to like tell them about every struggle in your life, but being know that you also go through the same thing in one aspects and the other, I think is helpful. I think that's
Mhm,
helpful. Yeah.
mhm. I love all of that, Cora. That's so good. Thank you. So, as a teacher who is here to help with leadership skills and mentoring other yoga teachers, you have this course, right? That's called Skill in Action. What is exactly
Yes.
this course? And can you tell us a little bit more about how you help in terms of leadership and mentorship with other yoga teachers?
I'm running, I'm having two programs, and one is Skill in Action, which is for yoga teachers, and I also run mentorship programs as well. But this Skill in Action, it's is mostly working with teachers when they are on the
Mhm.
stage. So again, this is how I say: I pass you the mic, I give you the stage. What does it mean? I think I see a lot of enthusiastic yoga teachers out there, and they take the 200 hours training, and then they listen to the podcast, they read all the books, and then they take another 300, they take all the certification, they work so hard, and they gain all these knowledge, but they have nowhere to
Mhm.
apply it, right? So which I think having a strong practice or maintaining our own practice is important. I think continuing to learn is important, but if you're not teaching, you're missing one big important piece of teaching. The only way to get better at teaching is to teach. However, so what can you do when you don't have an audience, when you don't have students? How can you practice teaching when you don't have students? Actually, that's another course that I'm coming out with, is how to practice teaching, self-practice teaching when you don't have
Mhm.
students yet. And I have some tools and skills to do that. But in this skill in action, what it really is a teaching practicum where most of the time the my mentees will be teaching, and I would give them some guidelines on how to teach. Right, that's usually getting into the alignment details, but 80% of the time would be them teaching, and I give them
Mhm.
feedback, and then we just troubleshoot along the way. So that brings into like a couple of things. Is one is a teaching practicum where teachers get to practice teaching. Two is to receive constructive feedback, which is something that we also lack as teachers, meaning that we don't often get feedback, and we don't often get constructive feedback. Another brutal truth: your students are not often, they are good people to give you feedback, but not often the best people to give you
Mhm.
feedback, right? They may not be, they would say, oh my God, your class is great, right? They may not be the best person to give you for feedback for many reasons, right? For many reasons, right? If you're in a hot room, someone is going to think it's too hot, someone is going to be too cold, music or no music. So if you're not getting constructive feedback from someone who has who can probably help you, a lot of time feedback become not constructive. So we're either not getting feedback or not getting feedback that can be helpful. So skill in action is really giving the teachers the opportunity to actually practice teaching, to get constructive feedback, and then through that, because this is very interactive, it's not me talking, through that we start to build the language, right? What is the language? What is the tone? What are the and to fit into what that teacher's character is, right? So we all teach differently, and only through that teaching we can explore, and they can explore what is the authentic voice, right? Some people are stronger. So, for example, I'm very techy, right? I'm very techy, so my language will be a lot more technical. Some people are a little bit softer, and only through this interaction and collaboration and co-working together, and we geek out. And most of the time, while it's called skill in action, meaning that it sounds it's about skills, most of the time what teachers get out from it is they can really find their authentic voice, not only to hone in into their teaching skills in terms of there is some technical part of it, but mostly is how they can speak up as who they are. So that is what it is, yes. And it's very personalized, right? It's very personalized. Everyone is different. So you teach, I give you like, and it's very fun. It's super fun, and I wish I had that.
Yes, yes, and that's
Yeah,
kind of what I was about to say as well. I love that you brought up that it's personalized because I feel like in yoga teacher trainings, that's really the area that's kind of lacking. And I mean, even in public classes too, as somebody
oh,
who
totally.
teaches public classes, it's like we're expected to teach yoga to a room full of people, and the
Yeah,
medicine needs to be dispensed in really individual ways. So it's a hard task to do, but
and
to have that
yeah.
kind of one-on-one attention is so needed and so necessary. I'm so glad to hear that you've created a space for that.
Yes, because there are, you brought up a good point, right? There are teachers who are teaching big group classes. So you would need classroom management skills and also more presentation. It's very different from if you're teaching like privates, right? I have students who teach on Zoom. I have students who teach in a boxing studio, and he wants to create yoga in his boxing gym, for example, right? So we have to troubleshoot in a different way, but at the same time it's also what they want to do, what they prefer, right? Meaning that some teachers prefer to teach smaller groups, some people prefer to teach bigger groups, and through the skill and action is through the action and the skills we try to find out what works for them in their whatever environment that is.
Hmm.
However, I do think that so skill in action is an individualized program. I do think a group mentorship also work, right? And that would be slightly different. That you can get actually bounce off from the community. But ultimately, I think having some sort of support post your 200-hour teacher training would be quite helpful, especially on honing teaching skills. Teaching skills meaning not like the methodology, like not the style of yoga, not wheelchair, like those are helpful too, but to consider your next step is to practice teaching and um, how to find your own voice, find a mentorship program to help you with that, or find a mentor who can help you with that. That can be
Yeah.
quite helpful.
Yes, a yoga coach. And that's another thing, especially when I found you on Instagram and I was like, we are walking such similar paths, is because I also noticed this hole, if you will, of taking yoga teacher training and then basically being dropped in the center of the ocean after yoga teacher training. And I kept hearing from so many of my students, like, they're like, I took yoga teacher training and I just felt like I was smacked over the face with the Yoga Sutras and kicked out the door, and I had more questions after than when I came in. And I'm like, oh, yeah, yeah, absolutely. And the thing that they felt like they got a lot of was a bunch of lecture, of course, and like started to understand poses and started to understand how to sequence, started to understand philosophy, a little bit of anatomy. But as far as that actual practical application of practice teaching, just getting more reps in of practice teaching was the big part that a lot of yoga teachers felt like it was missing. So I created a similar course as well, Cora, of almost everything that you're kind of speaking to. And it's so important to have that individualized attention from, number one, a coach or a mentor or a yoga teacher who's been in the game a lot longer and probably faced a lot of the same obstacles that you're facing now and then overcame them. And then, like you said, to get that feedback, and not just feedback once, but feedback multiple times so that it can start to stack and that feedback can compound to make real quick developmental strides. And then, like you mentioned too, in the group container, just to have other, it has that feeling of yoga teacher training, of that camaraderie and that community and connection that can celebrate your growth too, because that's what's hard about change. Change is hard, sometimes, especially when you have to break down a lot of the old patterns to then rebuild some better patterns. It can be difficult to do on your own, so it's important to have a community to cheer you on.
Well, I don't know, like I have been assisting quite a few 200 hours throughout these years. And I still felt that it's still quite one direction. There are encouragement of some reflection, but because it's a 200 hours and there's a lot of materials, as you said, philosophy, anatomy, yes, everyone walked out just feeling that they have more questions than they go before. But I think what is lacking is really the space to one teach, not enough, and you're overwhelmed, you're too new, you haven't got time to digest it. At the same time, it's also the time to reflect all these bigger questions, right?
Mhm.
Your intention, your purpose. We do talk about it, but no one actually sit down and spend time on it. And so that's why mentorship, or I actually call myself the after sales of 200 hours, right? After sales, right? Like really, right? What's next, right? Is the what's next is to have somebody to follow up with it with you and walking with you, starting from the scratch and like, why do I teach? What's my purpose? What's my goal? Who am I? what's my strength, what it is me to give. You start there, and then through that, and then you practice the teaching, and then I think that is the foundation that we're really missing in the yoga industry out there, until now that some of us are being the after sales, I guess,
Yeah.
right? And it's ongoing as well, meaning that I still have mentors. One thing I do want to mention, maybe it's helpful, is so I finished my 200-hour teacher training. I'm very lucky, meaning that my teacher, which is rare for a lot of people, is still very close to me. You know, he's a very good friend of mine at this point, and he's one of the teachers that would continue to support his people. However, he does still have like thousands of
Wow.
students, right? So, but many of the case that we see now is people can go to Bali and take a 200-hour training, and then boom, that's it, right? And there's nothing goes after, right? There's no ongoing support going after, or people even take courses online. So after the 200, they literally get stuck. What I did when I was in 2015, when I finished 200-hour teacher training, was I joined a mentorship program, and which was very rare at the point. There was nothing like that. Right now, you can see quite a lot of them. And it was with a group of, I think, 15, 16 new yoga teachers. And we got into this program of what we just talked about, right? We actually get a chance to practice teaching. It's a smaller group, is less intimidating. And that mentorship program runs every year still. And the two mentors that I have, one of them I eventually co-host mentorship programs with him. And the other one is currently my business coach. So I think we have to think about having someone to help you guide you along the way, more like a coach, is very different than your yoga teacher or the teacher that you take the 200 hours with. It's a
Yeah.
different role. And perhaps having a mentor, it's or a coach, you can call it yoga coach, can be very helpful to help you with your yoga journey as a yoga
Yeah,
teacher.
that's a great piece of advice. And just to tack on another little snippet on the back end of it, to have like to stick with one, to not
Yeah.
coach hop, you know, and that it's meant to be a very intimate relationship, because there can be no productivity, there can be no real like change if you're constantly, you know, seeking other people. And so there is something to be said of like spending real deep time with one teacher, with one mentor, with one coach. That just the longer you stay with something, the deeper it's going to go. That's just the truth. And that's true of all relationships. So I really hope that a lot of yoga teachers take your advice.
I think there was a phrase like a mentor is one that kind of know your potential before you do, and that it can only be done through a deep relationship. Kind of stick with a person and not to coach hop, right? Because only if they kind of know you a little bit, then they may see something in you that you don't see right now.
Yeah.
And that's very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you, Cora, for being on the podcast today, for sharing your
Thanks for
genius,
listening.
sharing all of
If
your
this
wisdom.
is your
And
first
I really
time,
hope that
peruse
some
our
people
feed
listening
to
do
see if
take
there's
the time to
something
check out
else
your
that will
course.
serve you.
I'm going to link it
We're
in the
so
show
grateful
notes
that
for
you're
you, just to
here and
help
invite you to
spread
join our inner circle
other
by
resources
subscribing
and
to
other
our
support.
newsletter.
That
If this
yoga
episode
teachers might
resonated
need.
with you, help
Is
us
there
spread the
one
word by
last
sending it
little
to a friend who
gem
needs to
that
hear
you
this
want to drop for
message.
the community?
Likes,
Or how else
follows,
can the
sends,
community get
shares,
plugged
and
in
reviews
with you
help
and
us
all
to
of your
continue
offerings?
delivering high
Great.
quality
Okay,
content to
so
you for
I think I
free
have
each and every
three
week.
little
Don't forget to tag
advice.
at
One
Master Your
is
Yoga
don't
Teaching
wait.
so we can reshare.
Teach someone, anyone.
I am a
start
certified
with.
yogi.
Two
However,
is
this
find a
podcast is intended
mentor
for information
who can
and
support you.
entertainment only. If you are
And number
interested
three
in
is have a
mentorship or
community,
coaching with me,
because
check out the
teacher
website
can
linked
be
in the show
teaching
notes
can
to
be a
get more
very alone
information.
job.
This content
having
and
a
other
tribe
content
with you
produced by
is what keeps us
CLW
going when
Studios
things are hard.
and affiliated partners
So I'm going to finish
is
off
not
with an
therapy,
African
and nothing in
proverb,
this content
which is
indicates a
about building the
therapeutic
community. We're just trying to
relationship.
do it here.
Any opinions
And
of guests
also
on the
with your own
podcast
as
are
well.
their
Is it
own
if
and
you
do
want
not
to go
represent
fast,
the opinions
go
of
alone.
Mackenzie
If you want
or
to go far,
CLW
go together.
Studios.
That's awesome.
Learn more
Thank you.
about
Thank you
Mackenzie,
so
her
much,
guests,
Cora,
and
for
CLW
being
Studios
here
by following
today
the links in
and
the show notes.
for doing the
Keep
work that you're
shining,
doing.
and
It's
we
so
will see you
important. It
next
needs to be
Wednesday
done,
for
and
another
as much
dose
as
of
you
Master
are
Your Yoga Teaching.
encouraging other people.
Namaste, bless.
I just want to encourage you too, that you're doing such great work, and I see you, and I'm grateful to you, and I know that it's going to help so many people. So thank you.
And we're going to do this together, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we can all learn
Exactly.
from each other. So everybody, I will see you back here on the podcast next week. Until then, namaste blessed.